Train every day so that when it happens, you're prepared. That's something I've heard pretty much ever since I got into the fire service just a couple years ago. And it really hit home for me, and it makes a ton of sense. And I live by that rule, definitely. Today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the Clackamas Town shooting, just an overbrief. I was just given a class about this a couple weeks ago from the actual incident commander of the actual call, Battalion Chief Brian Rooney from Clackamas, and the sheriff's department also came out and gave us a little bit of a class on it as well because they were part of the call as well. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the preparation that goes on before these calls actually happen and why we prepare for them. And then we're going to talk a little. I'm going to talk a little to you guys about responding to these actual events, the stress that goes on, and sort of the steps that go on as well, and why they've changed over the last couple of years because of the more frequent calls we're starting to get, and we're starting to get a little bit better at it. And then the debrief that goes on after the calls as well. We call it the good, the bad, the ugly. And that's pretty much just talking about, self-explanatory. What went well, what went bad, and what was horribly is something like a safety issue. All right, we'll jump right in and go into the preparedness section. When we prepare for any situations, we have pre-plans for almost any type of situation that we might encounter in our district. We do this because when you prepare for a situation, you want to know all the possible bad outcomes and good outcomes and the best way to handle them. So when we look at fires, we have pre-plans for certain buildings so that we know where a source of water is, and how many floors, and is there a hidden attic, stuff like that, so we can find fires effectively and whatnot. When it comes to active shooters, we do the same thing. We're emergency services, so we're going to provide medical services to people that are hurt. And so when we prepare for active shooters, this is another huge thing. So when we look at our big target areas, we say, well, in our district we have a big mall or an airport, so we prepare for things like that. So before we even run the scenarios, we're going to have to come up with a list of stuff that we're going to need, that we think we would need for a call like this. So for an active shooter, we're going to need a lot of medical supplies mainly. And then after we get all the equipment necessary, then we're going to start running through the scenarios, given a bunch of different ones, and see what works out best for us. Every place is different, and every scenario you go through is going to be a little bit different, which is why you can't just get in a groove and practice the same thing over and over, because that call that comes in one day, it's not going to be how you practiced it, and it's got to be a little bit different every time, and that'll make you adapt and overcome every time. When you actually respond to a call like this, it's definitely a very scary moment. You're not really sure what's going on, but that's when your training starts to kick in, and you start to say, you sit back and you say, okay, I'm just going to let my training take over, and this is when this is where it really matters and where it really counts. There's lives on the line, and so is yours and your buddies, and you got to be on point at this time. When you first get on scene, you want to set up in the appropriate area. So you're going to have your incident commander say, we're going to have staging on the northeast side of the building, or Alpha Bravo Charlie side. It doesn't really matter. You're just going to listen to your incident commander and set up there. That's going to be when that's going to be your warm zone. You're going to pull the patients out of the hot zone, and that's the actual scene. You're going to pull them and bring them out to the warm zone, and they're going to be treated there. And then there's going to be a line of ambulances, and they're going to put them on the ambulances when they're ready to transport. You want to make this in the most effective way because there's so much time involved. And you have to get them to the hospital in a certain amount of time. And you want this to go very smoothly, and you don't want to have a bunch of fire trucks and ambulances all scrambled up where they can't even move. That was a huge problem at 9/11, that all the fire trucks couldn't even get in because one was parked in the middle of the road and blocked the whole road from the other fire trucks getting. So staging is a huge actual part of it now. When you get into the actual scene, every place does this a little bit differently, but we're practicing now that we're going to go in right after the police and after they clear the zone. There's no really point of going in when the shooter's still up, because if we get taken down, then we're just another patient and we can't help anybody that's been hurt. And so we're going to usually have the police bring the patients or the people that are hurt out to the right to the end of the hot zone, and we'll intercept and take them to the warm zone and treat them, and then have them being transported. There's a lot of practice that has to go on between the police department and the fire department to mix well, but it is a lot of total chaos at that time. But the more you practice and get to know the agencies that you work with, the more smooth it will go. Once you get the patients to the warm zone and you start treating them, you're going to have different triage areas. You're going to have a green, a yellow, and a red. And red being most critical, and they're going to be transported first, and yellow, and then green, in that order. And so you want to take care of those people as fast as possible and get them on an ambulance as fast as possible, and make sure your hospital knows who you're bringing in, what the situation is, and say, you know, there was an active shooter in play right now, and you know, here's how many patients we think we have, how many can you handle, and then we'll kind of go out from out there and see what hospitals can take who and how many. After any call, we do a debrief. We call it the good, the bad, the ugly. So pretty much the good is what went smooth about the call, or what went well. And this is huge because this is kind of where you build up your guys and say, hey, you know, I know this was a very bad and emotional call, but what went well for us? And you talk about that first. And then, you know, what could we improve on? This is the bad. What could go a little bit smoother was the transporting from the hot to the warm zone not smooth, or did one of our fire guys go into the hot zone when he shouldn't have and wasn't protected by a police officer or something like that. You know, that starts to dig more into the ugly side, because that's a safety issue. You know, fire departments we don't have bulletproof vests, we don't have firearms, so we're going in empty-handed and really no protection. Our only protection is the police department. And so that's kind of why we don't go into the hot zone anymore, because of the risk that we have. And actually at the Clackamas Town Center, some of the fire guys went in with the police department, and the police department ended up deserting the fire department guys, and so they were left totally unguarded and kind of roaming around, freestyling themselves, and it was a very dangerous situation, and it has changed a lot because of that actual call. Our operating procedures have changed a lot because of that actual call, and that's why we don't go in anymore. I know we went kind of fast on that, but there's so much that goes into pre-planning and stuff like that. But really, it comes down to training every day and preparing for things that happen like this. Being prepared is the first step in the whole process. We have a little saying. It goes, pre-planning, preparation, practice prevents poor performance. So that pretty much means when you practice every day, different scenarios, and you have your pre-plan set up, that sets you up for success, rather than just, you know, freestyle and say, here's what we got, we're on the way there, we'll be here in a minute. That doesn't really work well ever, and it looks very unprofessional, and we're in the business of providing a service, and we're going to be very professional at it and do it to the best of our abilities, either with technology, learning, as many ways as we can. We'll provide it in any way possible. Responding to that call you've studied for, prepared, and practiced for here is here, and now it's time for your training to take over. You can't let your tunnel vision take over. You got to remember, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Don't go fast, because that's when things go wrong. You can't help others when you are hurt or your partner's hurt. So you have to remember that you can't be a hero that day. You have to stick to the plan and really go smooth and go slow, so that you watch everything and you do not mess up and put other lives in danger. The debrief is probably one of the biggest components to all of this, because it brings everything together. It brings your pre-plans, your training, and the actual events all into one thing, and it makes you see what went well and everything, how your training affected the actual call. There's so many aspects to the debrief and how much research goes into it. And you say, well, this is what worked and this was what didn't. And so now when we make new pre-plans, this is what we're going to input and this is what we're going to take out of it. There's so much that we could talk about, but today I think I'm done. And thank you for your time. Have a nice day.